Are we going? Aye. Hey, it was Wolf Johnson. We're in Toronto, Canada. That's kind of where I live. Okay. We're going to see a guy named Krosst Out. He's a musician. He makes music. He's a rapper. But it's like a hybrid style. It's different. And I always see him on TikTok, so that'd be an interesting guy to talk to. So we're going to go meet him at Nathan Phillips Square. A throat or neck. Like the law of the land in Toronto, you just walk into traffic and it's like you don't even worry about it. You don't look both ways. You just go and the cars will stop.
We're out pretty quick.
We should do that here. Sorry if I'm going too quick. You know, all right, kill it. Let's kill it. We cross here. Trying to get impaled by IKEA.
Look, I just got a tattoo. Ready?
Oh, there you go. Thanks a lot, man. Take it easy. You get that?
I couldn't get a tattoo, but I got everything else.
Okay. I'm sure if we go somewhere central, we'll just kind of stand out. You know? Oh, here we go. Okay, bro's up top. There's a guy. He's up top there. On. Pleasure to meet you, my friend.
Good to meet you, man.
Yes. All right. Well, you're Krosst Out. Should I call you KO or should I call you Krosst Out?
You can call me whatever you like.
Does anybody call you Mr. Out?
People call me Mr. Out all the time.
Like who?
Shout out Taboo. He's the one that started it.
Oh, really? Mr.
Yeah.
Out. I caught you on TikTok the first time I saw you.
Yeah, you did.
And it was on mute first. I'm like, this guy's super interesting based on your aesthetic alone.
Thank you.
So like, what does that come from? Your aesthetic, your look, how do you build that?
I mean, it's just kind of, I feel more authentic, like dressed like this and just able to be myself. And I think it's just sort of an expression of who I am, you know? I'm sort of this amalgamation of sounds, like the nu metal or the punk and the rap. Like all of these things combined, I feel kind of just makes my style, you know? So
Right.
yeah.
So, yeah, and so it's cool that you can translate that visually as well as sonically, because I know a lot of artists, you wouldn't know they're artists, you know?
Yeah.
You like, they just look, because they don't always build out their artistic profile to wear their identity as well.
Yeah.
And you got that bang on. So you're from a small town.
That's true.
I'm from a small town too.
Oh shit, where?
New Hamburg.
I don't know
Have you
where
heard of
that
that?
is. No.
What's a small town I could point to? Have you heard of Waterloo?
Yeah.
So outside of Waterloo, there's all these rural communities and like these small communities, like towns, they'll be like 20 miles apart, but they'll all go to the same school.
Okay.
Kind of thing. But I was different there because it was all very white Christian. And when I
Nice.
first got there, people thought I was black because that's how white it was.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not, but I appreciate it, you know? What was your experience like? Because you mentioned on your socials that it was a little bit different for you.
I mean, the way that you just described your town is almost identical towards mine. Most rural, rural towns in Canada are like the same, I feel.
Yeah.
And there's 3,000 people in my hometown.
Woo!
And there's a lot of churches. They got the Free Methodist, the Presbyterian, the Baptist, the Catholic, like all the other ones, just for that small town. And yeah, you would be considered like a black guy in my hometown.
Let's
man.
go.
Like,
Love
not
that.
a whole lot of racial diversity going on.
And so for your taste in music, like what was the culture like there? And did you kind of fit in or not?
Not at all, man. Like I've mentioned it a whole bunch, but like when I first started really getting into hip hop music, it was like, I get it all the time. You're not black. Like that was the mentality
Really?
of oh yeah, that was the mentality of that type of stuff, right? And then I didn't really have too many like rapper or hip hop head friends. Most of my friends were metal heads,
Right.
and then my Christian parents were into the old school rock and roll.
Okay.
And so hip hop was more of like a taboo type of thing in my household.
So were your parents okay with you listening to that, or was it a bit like, we're gonna
no.
watch this guy?
No, not at all. My introduction to hip hop was Christian hip hop.
Okay.
That's how I got into it. So like KJ52 and like Flame and some of those like old school Christian hip hop guys. Like those are my first influences into that world. And then I kind of just started sneaking in more and more of like
2001.
Yeah, like the Rakims and the Nuns and the M&Ms, and like when my parents found an M&M CD in my room, they were very
The
pissed.
devil's got him. So were there like big interventions staged for you?
I do remember the conversation of like, we're worried about you, and like this is gang-related music. That was a thing, which is like,
What gang you joining out there?
oh, I don't know, the Cow Tippers or something, the White Boy Posse.
Cow
like,
Tippers. Do you want to give a shout out to your hometown?
Shout out Campbellford though. I do love Campbellford. I try to give as much love as I possibly can.
Yeah, like even though I may have mentioned I suggested some derogatory connotations towards my small town, I had a blast. Bush parties,
Yep.
got into all the trouble. There was nothing to do, so we ended up making music, or trying to. Was that kind of how you got into music? Was it an absence of interface that led you to start music, or was it just out of the love and then you had to leave the town to go find a place to make it?
It just was this thing where that was all I wanted to do. So to get my parents off my back of going to school, I went to Recording Arts Canada.
Oh,
and
nice.
Then, you're not going to build a music career out in Campbellford. So
I guess you could almost now if you're on TikTok.
you could. Back then there was no TikTok though. So
What was there back then? Like, what was your main thing? Was it MySpace? Or was it
I
early
set
Facebook?
up a Facebook account.
Okay.
And I had a Facebook fan page, and just all my high school homies liked it and stuff. It was, for me, I think it was around that time. There was Reverb Nation.
Oh yes.
That was-
they were tight for a bit.
They were tight for a bit, yeah. I found some cool artists on that.
Damn, man. That's a throwback.
That is a throwback.
So pursuing your dreams, like I find anytime I'm trying to do something, there's like 100 people telling me why I shouldn't do it. And give me reasons why it can't be done. Coming from that kind of community, was it nothing but contention and challenges with people? And did you have to cut people off?
I come from a long line of farmers, so there's a lot of my uncles are farmers and stuff, so they're very much used to working with their hands. My dad was a carpenter as well as he did music, but it didn't really pan out for as a career. So there is that stigma of but what are you gonna do to make money?
Yes.
You need a real job. It's cool as a teenager to be super interested, and I always love that you're pursuing a passion in music, but then they're you gotta be realistic about it. You can't just you're not gonna make money off of this.
Yeah.
And
it always comes from a positive intent. Parents trying to they want to help you because they think that's the right advice.
I think so.
Right?
But on the other hand, I think there's also this. This is no slight, but there are a lot of people that are my parents' age, or in that age range, where music, they were in a band and music didn't pan out for them, and so
Yeah.
they're kind of sour about it, right?
Yeah.
They're well, I didn't make it, so you probably won't either.
Ooh.
they gave up on a dream and then they moved on to something else. And I mean, it happens all the time, you know? It's not necessarily just even music that you're giving up on. Like, you might want to be like a painter, or you might want to be like, just your dream as a child kind of dies out once you hit like 24, and then they just pack it in, get a realistic job, you know, and then that's it. And then so they'll tell the other people, kids like me at that time, be more realistic.
That's like, I find that to be incredibly motivating. When somebody says, I think it's maybe I didn't have my dad around, whenever somebody says like, you can't do that, I'm like, okay, now I have to do it out of some almost like petulant need to defy.
Yeah.
But it's worked out well for me, and in whatever I chose to endeavor in, except music. I just don't have talent, you know, but I work hard.
I mean, that's 90% of the effort, right?
Yeah, but it still put me in the arena to try.
Yeah.
And otherwise I wouldn't have, because it wasn't an interest of mine until somebody said, I like listening to it, but I wasn't going to make it until somebody said, you can't do that. And then I had fun.
It's so much more fun when someone says you can't do something, because it lights that fire under your ass, you know?
Yeah. And then when you achieve it, it's almost like if you go to the gym and you're like pressing weights and it's too heavy. Eventually you get it.
Yeah.
And it's like when you finally do something you were told you can't do, it just stretches out the expanse of your mind and the reach of your own abilities. And I think that's so important, to constantly be challenging ourselves. Even if we're not challenging ourselves, sometimes I find it helpful for somebody to be like, you can't do it.
And trust me, I mean, there is a lot of self-doubt. It's like when you are going to the gym and you're like, all right, I'm gonna get in shape, and this time I really mean it. And then it is such an arduous journey just to get to a point where you're like, you know, last year I wasn't able to push that much weight, and now I can do that like almost with no problem.
Yeah.
And then you start seeing these like little growths of like, hey, yo, look at my calves. My calves are like looking tight. And then same thing with music. It's like people like get stuck on just dropping a song, and like they want to blow up after that one song, but you got to look at like just the years of like this song, that song, that song, that song, that song, that song, and then eventually something will stick. You know, I saw an interview. It was like a little snippet on TikTok, and it was JPEG Mafia, and he's like, just keep. My advice to the artist is just to keep going. You know, I had like 50 views for 15 years, so like just keep going, and that's mentality. You get like, you almost just have to be bullheaded and live in La La Land to a certain degree, where you're like, no, I'm gonna make it, or no, this is gonna work out. Like, you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in yourself.
So you mentioned your dad was a musician. What kind of music did he play?
He played guitar, but he played just, you know, like the 80s rock.
That's cool.
He was very influenced by Eric Clapton and The Who and Dire Straits. So I mean, those are some of my favorite bands.
I'm curious, who influences you outside of hip hop?
Well, Rage Against the Machine, I don't know if they count as like as hip hop. They're sort of like that cross between.
They could, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they kind of cover a lot of genres.
There's System of a Down, big influences. 9 Inch Nails. One of my big influences, controversial, but Marilyn Manson.
Okay, yeah.
You know, say what you want, but he's got a spot in my heart for like just how defiant he is in his music, and how defiant he was, and just like how he's pushed boundaries, and just his whole persona is something that has really influenced me as an artist. And then Under Oath, I take a lot of inspiration from Under Oath.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought that.
There's a lot of homages to Under Oath in my current music.
Cool.
Yeah.
To look for those.
Yeah.
All those artists are defiant.
Yeah.
Is it the defiance?
I think
first
so.
and foremost that leads you to them, or is it the sound?
I mean, I think it was initially what attracted me to them was the sound, but then when you read up on these artists, just how defiant they were. Being a fan of Under Oath and then learning all of that background, and just like how abrasive they were against the system that wanted to put them into a box, that makes me even more of a fan.
Your marketing for your recent video is like defiant. You got the Molotov in there.
It was that. I like to do something different at every single release, something that I haven't done before. Kind of keeps things interesting. And I think this one is more, it sonically kind of sounds like the 2000s new metal and like Linkin Park and stuff. But yeah, we straight up like went ahead and just made Molotovs.
Hell yeah.
For the promo.
No big deal.
It got a little dangerous at some points, but we were right there by the water, so if anything did go awry, we were just able to throw it in the water. As I've matured, I've kind of like, I want to talk about more stuff, and this is sort of things that are affecting all of us, I think.
Yeah, well, because you can definitely talk about societal and issues and cultural issues and values without it necessarily being wrapped up in like a two-party system political kind of dialogue.
Yeah.
And I feel like, as much as I love Rage Against the Machine, now that people are kind of programmed culturally into two-party thinking, which has kind of plagued our society for the past 5 years, now it's like suddenly these people who like Rage Against the Machine, like, I don't like it now because I know where they're politically aligned.
Yeah.
But if you were to remove that, people would still F with their music, I think.
Well, the funny thing about Rage Against the Machine is that both sides relate to them almost equally.
Yeah.
To a certain degree, like if you didn't know where they stood, because you see like the leftists, they'll use killing in the name, and then same with the alt-right, they will use killing in the name. Fuck you, we won't do what you tell us.
I do like music that talks about things. I find it hard to attach to music that is void of any of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's comfortable to get into like dream pop or something, but if you want to really engage me, it's always like the lyrics. And it doesn't always have to be a cultural thing. It can be something that is real, but it's plaguing you as an artist or any artist.
And I mean, well, and your job as an artist is to say your truth and how you view the world. So to me, I don't really have any political agenda, but this is something that's been on my mind. And I want to express that in the best way that I possibly can.
Right.
And hopefully, maybe change the way some people might think about something.
I think that's the most altruistic pursuit of an artist.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you're a real artist, you got something to say. And people can take it any way they want to. I mean, that's the glory about punk music, is that no one really knows how to sing properly.
Yes, that's
most of the punk singers are not good singers.
Yes.
So, but they have a message that they're trying to get out.
Am I to understand you lived in Montreal?
Yes.
How do you compare Toronto and Montreal?
Yeah, Toronto was just better. We're gonna take some shots, but
okay.
I'm not saying I don't love Montreal. I'm just saying that like Toronto, in my opinion, better. And the music scene here is better. There's still cliques that go on in Toronto, but it's you can kind of fit into more of them than you can there.
Right, there's more opportunity to network. So what are you working on now? What's next?
So I just put out there's two tracks I just put out. Die Tonight, featuring my buddy from California, Sideshow. Shout out Sideshow. And then a really great instrumental piece that was designed by my buddy Aha. And he sent it to me. It was like, this is a perfect kind of like interlude for the album. So the album that I'm working on right now is called I Had a Dream I Didn't Have Eyes. And it's sort of just it's a brashness that I wanted to bring, because I sort of went very somber with Phone Calls with Ghosts. It was a very personal record, and but I wanted to try to break new ground and maybe like dive more into my anger on this one. Talking a lot about like the state of the world that we are in right now.
It's a powerful name for an album.
I mean, it's not a lie. I was having a lot of like dreams that I went through a very dark period of time, and I think I lost all of the meaning of my life again, and I didn't know where to go. I was just truly lost. And so that's sort of the whole purpose of like, when you don't have eyes, you can't find yourself, you can't find anything. So like, I Had a Dream I Didn't Have Eyes is just like this journey of like nothing matters, because I was finding myself in phone calls, and then in this one it's like I found myself, but I sort of lost it as well. And even though I was that this doesn't. I don't know if this is making sense, but in my mind, it sort of makes sense.
It makes sense. Yeah, because we go through these metamorphoses, almost like ego
That's
death, right? You
hilarious.
you learn to fly, and if something happens, it could be a shift in the wind's current. You're off. You got to learn again. It's good though, right? Like you shed that shell. You have to be strong enough to get through a period of your life, and you have to be strong enough to know when to transform when your life calls upon you for that.
Yeah, and it's hilarious that you say metamorphosis because I was reading a lot of Franz Kafka.
There you go.
And he has the metamorphosis, and it's this, he's this man, he supports his family, and then he turns into a grotesque bug, a beetle. I have a beetle on my arm. He turns into a beetle, and his family is disgusted by him.
That's heavy, and there's so much ownership in that.
Yeah.
And to communicate in that way.
As you grow, you lose people along the way. You know, your circle shrinks as you start to grow.
Yeah, and I was thinking, as you're mentioning, you're working with a guy in California. How has your experience been with collaboration in terms of you reaching out and people reaching out to you?
It's been great. I really love being able to bring my KO flair to other people's projects, and then vice versa. I reach out to the people that I think will be able to bring something to this album in particular. This album has a lot of features. Most of my other projects before didn't have that many features, and it's been great. I got a lot of great people that I've worked with all around the world, really.
Amazing. You're right though, because you have a very unique flavor.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that from anybody else. It's got to be KO if you want KO.
Yeah. No.
That's a good thing to have on your side.
I think so. I mean, it's really truly an honor when people reach out to me and be like, I thought of you for this part. All right, cool, let's go. You know?
Yeah.
That means, I think, that's one of the signs of an artist that, you've made it as an artist, I think.
People are thinking about you.
Yeah. And having, oh, he would sound good on this because they know my sound and they're able to, yeah.
Is there a lot of drama in the Toronto music scene? In terms of high school? You don't got to say anything.
No, I mean there is, man. There's I feel like there's ego just with everything. There's ego and drama with everything and every kind of scene. Whether what you're a part of. It's photography or videography. I'm sure there is that no, fuck you, this is my project type of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think there's a lot of that. There's a lot of this need to big up yourself to other artists.
People are trying to eat, so yeah, I guess it could be that kind of, I don't know, I guess, is it an insecurity or is it a valid kind of response?
So there's two things. If you've been burned by so many people in the past, then you might think it's an excuse to act a certain way to other artists. I'm not letting anyone get close to me because this person here is going to burn me. Then there's the other side where artists are genuinely insecure about their sound, and I think deep down they know that they don't suck, but they're not up to a par. And this artist artistically is better than me. And for me, I'll still associate with anyone, regardless of your caliber of an artist. You could be down here. If you're a cool person, I want to see you succeed. I want to try and build you up. But if you act in a certain way where it's I'm threatened by you, I'm going to attack you. Then man, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, go fuck yourself.
That's how I genuinely feel. Go fuck yourself.
Do you think that comes from that appreciation for the little guy, support the little guy? Does that come from punk rock, or is that small town, or is that just because you're a good guy? Because I feel that way, particularly because of punk rock. Right. I think that's where it comes from.
Maybe it's from punk rock. I mean, it is a very kind of punk rock ethos. I'm very anarchist, where no one is better than anybody.
Yeah.
And I just try to be the best I can. But I think, yeah, there is like a certain small town kind of mentality of like, you know, maybe there's like a Christian thing that still resides inside of me too, like love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah,
And
I think that's good.
I kind of have like a base level of respect. Like you haven't done anything to me right now to like warrant me disrespecting you. So,
Could you imagine if it was the opposite, where like you're going around and you have to earn respect, so by default you're just like, hey, fuck you, you know, just out here chirping everybody?
you would be the most hated person in Toronto.
So when you're booking shows locally, you have a show coming up in September.
I do.
So if you're in Toronto, was it September 14th?
Yep.
At the Piston?
At the Piston.
Yeah. Wolf's gonna be there. Are you gonna be there? Do you book your own shows?
9 times out of 10 I book my own
DIY
shows.
till you die?
Yeah, 100%. Sort of developed a way of going about it, and anytime like book my own tours, book my own shows, find the artists, organize things. I think I figured out a pretty good way of organizing shows and how they should run fairly.
Yeah.
None of those dummy promoter type deals.
What's that where they like,
They just like stiff you on money.
yeah,
Yeah,
had a few of those.
yeah.
Yeah, like coming up in a small town, booking shows and like playing shows, it was always like, okay, if you want to play this show, you need to sell basically the whole venue's tickets.
Yeah.
Go sell them and then you can play. Okay, we would do that and then we don't get anything in return. It sucked.
But there is like a certain it's cool to look back and be like, yeah, I genuinely did that. Like I've been through the mud of like all of these like shit ass shows where like the promoter didn't want to do his job and like none of the other bands like really came through, or you booked a show in a small town and 2 people came out and you're like, I mean, let's just rock out for these 2 people.
Hell yeah.
Like there is like all of these stories that you just kind of accrue along the way, and it feels good. It's just like little notches in your belt.
What's the smallest or most embarrassing show? I won't even say embarrassing, but has there been a time where you've been playing and you're just like, this is embarrassing, I don't want to be here, I wish life was different?
Yeah, it's happened a couple of times. It's happened a couple of times.
There's no shame.
Where it's been like we've gone such a distance. Like we flew there and was just like, listen, the people there that were there were very receptive. But there was a couple of times where it was just a very like tough crowd. And then also there's like times where you're just like, we did a show in Moncton, New Brunswick, on a Wednesday.
Let's go.
And we just basically played to the bar owners and then our friends that were in the band and like the other rapper MDB, and like that was it. There wasn't really anybody that came out to that show, and you're like, damn, I drove here for this. All right, I mean, let's still go. And we still got connections there. Like, you know, the Sound Jam people are dope. Are dope dudes.
That's important. You have people in different areas. That's like a key to the city or cities, you know. That
Totally. Yeah. No. It like, even though you might not have like the best show in the world, it's still important to be a stand-up person. Bring your A game when you rock out on stage, and then just like be personable off stage to whoever is there. You don't know who's gonna be there. Like to the one person that shows up to your show that you did that night, that can mean the world for them, and they'll think about that all the time after. Right? Like, yo, I saw that person. I was the only person in the crowd.
Like, as we start to get more into social media centric as a society, you really start to see how these little interactions can either make or break some people in extreme ways.
Definitely.
Save their life, or maybe drive them towards ending their own life. You know, unfortunately.
No, for sure. And there's a lot more merit to things being in person now than just online.
Yeah.
You know?
That's why I wanted to have the conversation. Because I could be like, oh, I'll shoot you a Skype link. But like, it's different to get your energy as a human.
Yeah.
And just be in your presence.
And have a real conversation.
Have you ever had to work with any troublesome artists? Has there been any situations where you're left with the bag? Damage or like?
Not really. There was in the beginning, there was a couple of people where we just told them, like, we had kind of been like, yeah, come aboard for these couple of shows, you know, in these different cities, like, yo, come aboard. Like at the time I was like, you guys are cool, and then they started acting fools once they got to know us a little bit more, causing scenes. Yeah, they really, really like had an attitude. It was like rock star syndrome in a way.
Okay.
And they were almost like ready to
that's annoying.
throw fists over like beer money.
Come
Like,
on, beer money.
And
That's wild.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like the relationship there just like got broken. So
Were they like rock stars, or it's prima donna kind of thing?
definitely prima donna.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
come on, like this is years ago when I'm nobody now. Like I was.
I think
I don't
you're
even
somebody.
less than nobody back then.
I follow you on TikTok.
Yeah, you
and
do.
the gram.
Yeah,
You know?
we're connected now.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
I think it's funny to see those situations, but it's good to see those because it lets you know like who is professional, who's in this to win it, and who's just kind of
Yeah.
it's a hobby to them.
It's the Snoop Dogg mentality. You know the Snoop Dogg thing where he's like, you know, maybe like we start out, we're both here, but then I go here. And then like you stay here. I'm not gonna lower myself
Yeah.
to your standards. You gotta match me.
That's right.
Like, that's all about like as you progress as being an artist or even just being like a better adult.
What really worries you about the world right now on the deepest level?
I genuinely worry about the future for young people. You know, I got a nephew who is like 12, and like, what the fuck is the world gonna look like when he is my age? But then there's also all of these laws that are coming into place that they're trying to silence free speech or like trying to clamp down on so much like what would be rational discussion.
Yes.
And those people, if you even just kind of question anything, you get labeled as like a TERF or like a racist or a bigot or like anything. Those are kind of the two biggest things I think that really worry me. I really want to see like more people come together and have conversations about how they can actually do something better for the world instead of just like spitting in people's faces.
I'm really concerned about the suppression of speech too, and like the direction, as you're saying, towards conflict. Like it's never is there a resolution. It's always how can we create conflict and amplify that contact.
It's the living in the vacuum or having all of your friend group kind of pat you on the back about saying something like online that you think is virtuous, but really like you are just as dirty as everyone else. I know I've said this before in interviews and I've like posted like clips about it, but like everyone has blood on their hands. Like no one is above the law.
Yeah.
They think that they are, if they say this, they are now like truly like better. And it goes back to the, you know, like I'm a better person than you, and like
Yeah, and you're actually just fueling the very machine that is creating the conditions in the first place by participating. And it's almost like I think the way to subvert all of this is just stop participating, or at least find alternate channels for communication. Like if they were going to censor any social media, pick up a pen and paper, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like there's got to be different ways, and I'm really interested in radical communication and alternative methods of communication, because I think that is one day going to be considered a form of terrorism when you're communicating outside the official channels. Don't use the party line. Talk to people directly. I think when we get back to that and we can normalize that, I think some of us will find that our extreme views aren't so extreme. We're not so far, like we're not so different from one another.
No.
When it comes down to it.
And it's funny, like the people that like that are of that vein that want to jump on other people, if you get to know them like before anything like that, they are just they can be very personable, and you can connect with them on music or like art, you know, just kind of talking about life experiences. But then it's just sad to see like how much living in the vacuum has affected people, because then it will genuinely affect those relationships and those friendships, right? And it's hurtful.
And it's like you can affect real friendships and relationships like in order to save friendships with people who may not even actually be people, like bots, like your followers. And I think followers are helpful, but at what cost?
Well, with followers, it's like, that's why it's so important to be authentic, because when you're online, you build a following, but if you're pretending to be someone that you're not online just to build a following, the second that you kind of like switch to start being your real self, these people will be like, well, what the fuck? That's not the same person that I followed. And then you're back to square one. So you might as well just like take the hard route and like build your following organically and have all these people that, you know, maybe they don't all think the exact same way, but you can at least find some common ground and be like, yo, this guy's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, you respect it. You know, you can have some respect, mutual respect. What about society gives you hope for the future?
Artists that are able to subvert all of that and do their own thing. I find it very refreshing when I see people like that. You know, that gives me hope, at least for the music industry, and to open people's eyes on certain things. And there are very smart young people out there that you can't pull the wool over their eyes. And you see that because, like, you know, maybe some people are just so distanced from the younger generation that they just assume that all of them are just so like on their phones all the time. But a lot of them are trying to not be on their phones all the time. They want to go outside and play. They want to actually meet people in real life. And they're not about the bullshit.
There's so much distraction, and it's refreshing to see young people opting for the dumb phone over the smartphone, to start writing on typewriters again. And like, people used to call that hipster shit, but I think that's way more human than ChatGPT.
Yeah, I think like writing on a typewriter is so cool. I have one.
Yeah.
I don't use it as much, but there is still just like this thing of, there's no autocorrect, there's no spell check, there's just like, you just sit down and like let your ideas run rampant. Yeah. And then, okay, yeah, I mean, there's spelling mistakes, but like that happens. That's why I still use notebooks. Like I'll go, and like my handwriting is atrocious, so you can't really read it if you could. Yeah. But there's still just this thing of like, it's like spilling shit onto the page.
I agree with that, because I write as well. I cannot memorize anything if I type it. I have to physically write it down, and then I'll remember it like the first pass, because I'll sit there and I'll actually be engaged with it. And typewriters as well. I love the idea that if you fuck up, you can see, that's the time where I fucked up. Yeah. I think those are important, because flaws are beautiful too.
Yeah, nothing is really perfect. I mean, every song, if you might think like this song is perfect, to you it's perfect, but like that artist, it's like, he'll tell you a million things about that one song. It's like, there's a fuck up right there.
Is there any songs that you love that everyone else hates?
Just for like irony's sake, there's like, it was a bop in high school, but like we love to hate on it and pretend that we didn't like it. It's called Freaks by Broken Side. So anyone like from that era might know. It's such a fucking awful song, but it is also just so great because it encapsulates that era. It's more of like the memories that are associated with that song than it actually being a quality song. Because in all regards, it's pretty god awful.
But that is like, that's a value of a song, right? Yeah. So like, and now this brings me to my next question: is people and their negative comments towards your music online? Do you get that a lot?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Like, who is anybody to qualify what is good about music? Yeah. Particularly if you're not an artist. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, everyone has opinions. And yeah, your opinion is valid, but that doesn't mean that song sucks. I mean, Anthony Fantano has a lot of merit in what he says, but he's not always correct on shit. And I mean, he even says that too. He's like, this is just, you know, it is subjective. Art is subjective. You're making art. You're putting it into the world. It is an interpretation. If you don't like that, I mean, I sent Die Tonight out to a bunch of people, like a couple of like song reviewers and stuff. And they're like, I like this song. It's not necessarily my cup of tea. I've listened to it a couple of times. I might listen to it in my spare time. But the kind of stuff that I review, it's not, you know, it's not there. Like, I wouldn't review it. And I totally get that. Yeah. Like, no hate.
It's good, though, that it's not for everybody. Yeah. Because if it's for everybody, I feel like something's wrong. It's almost as good as being for nobody if it's for everybody. Music critics, there's one thing that really bothers me about music critics, and it's the arrogance that I often read on their position on a song. Because it can't just be like, I don't like it, or how they're reviewing it. It's like they're not even trying to find the intent of the song. It's like they're rating it against what they think the song should be instead of what the artist was trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and I think the problem with like music critics is that they are almost listening to so much music, right? I don't think you can necessarily be an expert in every single genre. I like jazz, but I don't really, I can't give you an educated opinion about jazz, and I don't really think that like music critics could give an educated opinion about every single genre of music. I don't think that's really possible. There is going to be like maybe a specific genre that you are just better at reviewing than not, and that's why I appreciate people that will actually just be like, all right, I'm just an alternative blog, and they'll just stick to that. But there are a bunch of people that are like, you know, I love all kinds of music, and I'm gonna tell you why, and I'm educated on this topic, like what you were saying. Like they'll kind of like, my opinion is the be all and end all.
Yeah, that really turns me off from it, because I think there's so much to be had and learned from just talking about music in an exchange, instead of somebody planting their flag and saying, well, this is how this song falls. This is how I define it, because it's fluid. Like your definition on anything is dependent on your life experience leading up to that.
Yeah.
Because we all carry different truths. We all speak different truths.
It goes back to the I like Freaks by Broken Side. It's not a good song, but it is a good song, right? And no one can tell me that it's not a good song. It's a fucking fantastic song.
What's the strategy moving forward, if there is one?
I'm trying to be the biggest rap rocker in the world. No. Getting myself to a point where making music every single day, just being able to like have a studio, work in the studio, just doing what I want to do musically. And I already do that, but with like maybe not like any financial incentive behind it, because
Right.
that kind of always sullies art to a degree, where you're like, yeah, but is that gonna like check all the boxes in terms of like making money? And yeah, I mean, it's so cool to see all of the people that have gathered and become a fan of my music.
Yes.
And I just want that to continue to grow.
The fact that you're doing it now, you just want to keep doing what you're doing. You've manifested, and now you're living your own dream. That's a beautiful thing to see, man.
I think so.
Is there anything else you want to say? You want to shout out anything? You want to touch on?
Come to my show, September 14th at the Piston. Gonna have Blackout Orchestra, we're gonna have Sonic Talk, there's gonna be me, there's gonna be Melodica, and there's gonna be my buddies Doomstoned. So it's gonna be a great time. Try and sell it out again.
There you go. That's a wrap.